really bad news about what the hell is going to happen next. We're in for serious trouble. The question is, are you prepared for it? And the better question is, how do you prepare for it, and how do we get through? How do you get through what's about to happen? Because it's one thing to crash, but can you survive it? The problem with most people is they're stuck in microeconomy. You know, they don't see the big picture. And I would estimate 90% of Americans just believe that don't worry, America will bounce back. I think it'll be happy days are here again. And as a U.S. Marine, we call the people who are stuck in the microeconomy, they got their heads up their asses. They can't even see what's happening in the real world.
So capitalism, in my view, became corrupted at the fundamental level when we stopped backing dollars with gold.
Yes.
To make a long story, not too complicated story, but to make a long story short, this unleashed an explosion of credit. Credit absolutely exploded. Total credit or total debt in the United States grew from $1 trillion when I was 3 years old in 1964 to $91 trillion now. From $1 to $91 trillion in my lifetime. And during that process, that created a great deal of wealth, a great deal of economic growth in the United States and all around the world. But our economy became addicted to credit growth. Our economy must have credit growth to stay out of crisis. And now credit is contracting when you adjust it for inflation. So this is a very serious problem for our economic system, which I call creditism rather than capitalism, since it's driven by credit growth.
Micro is this: you're standing you're pumping gas into your leased SUV, and you're going, why is the price of oil going up? That's micro. I mean, they can't see it, but inflation, I'm afraid, is systemic now. And a lot of it is because what Richard's talking about is creditism. They just print so much money. Instead of solving the problems, they print money. And now it's going to backfire on everybody. That's been the problem since about 1998 when LTCM, long-term capital management, crashed, and the Fed had to bail out a hedge fund. And Jim Rickards is a friend of ours who wrote the book Currency Wars and all that. His question was back then, who bails out the Fed? And I think we're kind of there now. I mean, that's what you've been writing about in Dollar Crisis and the Corruption of Capitalism. Who's going to bail out the Bank of England? And who's going to bail out the Fed and all the Bank of Japan and all these central banks? Because the English people still have no idea. Most Americans have no idea what happened, and they actually believe the Fed can save them. My friend Jim Rickards says, who's going to bail out the Fed? Who's going to bail out the Bank of England? The central bank system is under crisis also right now, and that's what Richard was alluding to 20-something years ago. And so the question is next is, what's happening in China? I mean, they have the biggest bubble in real estate ever, right? And this is the thing, I'm fourth generation Japanese American, and I always laugh about it because the Japanese per capita have the highest savings rate of all, demographically, the highest savings rate of any population. And that's why the Japanese aren't the smartest. I mean, why would you save money when the governments are printing it? So that's why in Rich Dad Poor Dad I put savers or losers. And now American savers are getting their butts handed to them because they're going to print even more. For all you guys who are working from home right now, your job replacement lives in India today. Because if you can come in via the computer and you don't need to go to the office because you don't want to go to the office like many workers don't, guys like me are going to say, well, why don't I just hire somebody in India? Because that's what technology is doing. The reason this is important, because we're crashing. Like it or not. I'm a Marine pilot. I went down 3 times. And the question is not if you're going to crash. The question is, will you survive the crash? And that's what I love about the Marine Corps. We practice crashing every single day. And so when the 3 times it happened in Vietnam, we survived. While people I meet, oh, don't worry, the Fed's got my back. The Fed will save the stock market. Oh, don't worry, my pension is safe and all this. But if you've read most of my books, like Who Stole My Pension and Prophecy and all that stuff, this is this book here, Rich Dad's Prophecy, and it says why the biggest stock market crash in history is still coming. Well, it's here, sports fans. I published this book in 2013 just to have an artifact to prove I knew what I was talking about, but how you can prepare yourself and profit from it. So today, I'm making more money hand over fist, but unfortunately the rest of the world's going broke. Like I went to school, my background is oil. I drove oil tankers for Standard Oil. And so today I own oil wells. I don't own oil stocks. And when Biden cut off the Exxon, the Keystone XL pipeline in 2000, the first act he did was the act of sabotage, what Biden did, in my opinion. I was selling oil at $30 a barrel. Immediately when he cut that off, it went to $130 a barrel. Meanwhile, the middle class and poor got poorer, and guys like me got richer. And the dollar crisis was after Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard in 1971, which was the corruption of capitalism, because you could print money to pay bills, the US dollar. What you said was that the reason there wasn't inflation was because China was producing so much. They could send goods over to America, like even our pharmaceuticals, at such low prices that Americans didn't feel the inflation. Once again, it's the high productivity of the Chinese people that kept inflation low in America since 1971. Well, the world is crashing. I don't know if people understand that, because in 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. 1944, during the Bretton Woods Agreement, the dollar became the reserve currency of the world, but we made a promise to the world that the US dollar would be as good as gold. The trouble is, we started fighting the war in Vietnam and the war on poverty in America, socialism. And we didn't have enough money. So we broke the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1971. Nixon took us off the gold standard, and that was the corruption of capitalism. They could print money rather than make work for money. So ladies and gentlemen, we're screwed. Prepare for the crash.